I wanted to start off and just obviously thank you for sharing your story. We wrote your blog and posted that on our website, and you were so kind in sharing your story for others. And then also your podcast was so great to hear Jasmine's perspective. Jasmine is your foster daughter's biological mom.
Yeah.
And hearing her perspective was so insightful for me and eye-opening for me because I've never heard from a biological parent's perspective like that.
Yeah, I think most people haven't, and I think that's why I wanted to share her story. And I think, you know, my whole podcast is about sharing women's stories and empowering them to tell their story, tell their truth. And it's like all different kinds of women. And I always felt like when I started this podcast, I don't even know, 2 years ago or whatever it was, I always prayed and felt like one day I would have a bio mom on my podcast, and then to see it come to fruition, I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's just beautiful. The friendship is beautiful. The podcast episodes are beautiful. Jasmine does such a good job telling her side of the story, and yeah, I just love her.
She's super well spoken. I loved listening to her. But I wanted to start because we're going to share this video with people who aren't foster parents and maybe some who are just getting started with the process. So I wanted to ask why you and Ken decided to get started with foster care in the first place.
Okay, long story short, Ken and I always wanted to adopt. And I remember before we got married, I was kind of talking to him, like, I really feel like we're supposed to adopt. And he was like, yeah, that's great, you know, and that's really the only thing that we had like talked about. And then he played baseball at the time, so we were traveling and all these things. So we kind of had like our eyes open to an opportunity if it would come up. It was just really stirring on our hearts. We didn't know when, we didn't know where. We honestly didn't even know why. But then we moved, when Ken was done playing baseball, we moved back to Arizona. And I remember I went to church one time and my friend was like, well, have you ever considered foster care? And I was like, no, I've never considered, like, I don't even know what that is. Like, I knew what it was, but like, to me, it was like such a foreign thing. I feel like I was so ignorant to like what it was, because I think I've always just had this negative connotation attached to foster care. Like, I honestly just thought, this is so bad, and you can edit this out. I thought weird people fostered for weird, terrible reasons. Like, and that's all I knew. I was so ignorant to the fact. I had no idea what it was, to be honest. And I remember we got in the car and I was like, Ken, would you ever consider fostering? And he was like, yeah, I don't think that's like the route we're going to go. Like, I just don't feel like that's it. And not like, I think that was on a Sunday, and literally on Wednesday, Ken was on his laptop and I was sitting at the kitchen table, and he was like, did you know that there's like 20,000 kids in foster care? Like, there's babies sleeping in office spaces because they don't have beds for them. And at that time we had a 2-bedroom condo, and I looked in that second bedroom and I was like, I'm putting a baby in that room. And so that Saturday we signed up for orientation. I don't even know how it is like now, this was like years ago, but we signed up for orientation and we just told God, like, we're going to go with this until you close the door. And he never did. So that's kind of how we got into it. The rest is a crazy story, but yeah, it's beautiful. So we're so happy that we got licensed to foster. Yeah.
That's awesome. So when you, on your podcast, you explained that during the trainings, trainings have changed a little bit since then, but they kind of scared you when it came to biological parents and how that was going to look.
Yeah.
As far as building a relationship with them or reaching out to them. Mm-hmm. And so when you had Penelope, mm-hmm. She was just a week old when she went to her visit. Mm-hmm. And you said you had just a tug on your heart to reach out and send her mom a letter. So explain kind of your perception of bio parents before you started fostering, and then how that's changed throughout your time and experience through foster care.
Okay, yeah, I think honestly it's become less scary as far as like opening up our lives to the biological parent side. We had our first placement. We took a 2-day-old baby girl in when I was 5 months pregnant, and we ended up adopting her. Well, her mom was like nowhere in the picture. And it's like so sad. Like just thinking about like, where is she? I have no idea. There's no way for me to even contact her. That really made me sad because we ended up adopting this little girl and she's our first daughter. And, you know, I sometimes wonder, like, I wish that I could like send her pictures, or like, I wish that, you know, while she's like out there blowing bubbles, I could just like send her a little video, or, you know, and just like share her life with her. I don't know. And so, I think with Penelope, she was our second placement. We had just adopted Nadia, our firstborn, and our biological had just turned 1. So in that, I just felt like, you know, whether sorry, let me backtrack. When we got Penelope at 2 days old, they told us, you're going to adopt this baby. So like, just get ready. The placement center said that. And I was like, oh, okay, awesome. You know, and they kind of told me the backstory, and they're like, literally, you're adopting, like, just get ready. They turned it to severance super quick, all these things. And I remember thinking, well, if we adopt this baby girl, my heart hurts for this mom who is losing her baby girl. And I didn't know if that mattered to her. I didn't know if it was going to be devastating to her. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to reach out, start the relationship, and just see what happens. So that's kind of like where it started. I think it wasn't like this, like, oh, and then God told me, and then like, it was literally just like, I feel like I should just write her a little note. Like, as simple as that. It was such a simple thought. And so I just like wrote on some janky piece of paper and like sent it along the way with Penelope. So
that's awesome. And then that started, because she wrote you a note back, and that started your guys' relationship. As you were caring for Penelope, you went on doctor's visits, and I know that there was some nervousness there as far as like her learning too much about you, and like trying to maybe come and get Penelope, or so explain kind of some of those fears. And they never came to fruition, obviously. But yeah.
So I think what sparks a lot of fear, I think, in foster parents, not only, I did have like some fear with PS maths, which I don't even know if that's even a thing anymore. The training that we went through, the 6-month training that we went through, they kind of like want to lay it all out there so that you don't get into foster care and you're not just like, whoa, this is like way harder and not what I thought. Which I appreciate that they did that, but at the same time, I wish they could have said like more of like, this is what it could be. You know, it could be this beautiful story of like redeeming families back together, or adopting a child who needs a mom and dad, or needs a mom or needs her dad, you know. But I like cannot even remember your question. What did you just say?
For some of those fears that you had.
Oh
yeah.
Sorry. Hopefully you can. So some of those fears came in not just from that training, but a lot of it came in from caseworkers, from placement center, from the world. Honestly, when we got placed with Penelope, I had guardian ad litem's telling me this mom is manipulative, all these things, like these terrible things about this bio mom, about Jasmine, and just, you know, she did this in her past, and this, and her kids were found like this, and they just literally don't even understand what they're saying. They are just talking, and they just like, honestly, like what I have found personally, it's like something that I'm really trying to shift with every caseworker that I have since this happened, is just to change the narrative and flip the script. And like don't, I feel like caseworkers sometimes will go into the bio parents' house and be like, we're gonna get your baby back, and like telling them all these things of hope and all these things, and then they come into my house and they're like, oh, she's never getting her baby back, she did this and she did, and like just talk about her past and just all the negative things. And so that really scared me, because I thought Jasmine was this scary person who, if I came next to her, she would like rip my hair out and fight me, you know. And like that is like the real reality of like, I've been in foster groups, like even on Facebook and like just little groups, and they're like scared of these bio families because they feel like they're these dangerous people, when in reality they're just someone who has gone through some really tough things. And like, I will let Jasmine tell her own story when you can listen to that on the podcast, but she has had this like insane life that I could not even imagine. And she just needed a little bit of help to get right and get stable. And then she is a thriving mom. Like sometimes I'm like, she's a better mom than me. And so I think just all the things, you have to keep your perspective, especially as a Christian foster parent, you have to keep your perspective of what the world says is not truth, and I'm choosing to believe the best. I'm choosing to believe and give the benefit of the doubt and speak faith and speak life over this mom and dad, or over this mom's situation, over this child's situation, and choose to believe that the best is yet to come and their past doesn't define them. So I think that's the approach that I took with Jasmine and now our little boy that we're fostering right now. I have a great relationship with his parents as well. So
that's awesome. That is the example that we want to set for all of our foster families through CFC and all of Arizona, because we think that that can have such a profound impact on bio parents when they're just surrounded with a circle of support.
Totally.
Sometimes that's all they need.
Totally.
Obviously, it doesn't always work out like that. There are some bio parents who are not in the picture, who don't want to be in the picture. But obviously, like, we're here at CFC for kingdom impact, right? To make those really like generational impacts. And so if we can reach more than just the child and have that ripple effect be through the families, I think that's what we're really all here for. So I think it's really great what you guys are doing. And I think it's important to keep into perspective. Like, if you and I had grown up with an unsupportive family or with a mental, health illness, we're just one bad decision away from being where they are, right?
Yep, exactly.
So and, I think it's important.
I think a lot of people get scared, like, well, what if the bio family doesn't want me in their life? Maybe they think I'm the one that took their kid. Maybe I'm the bad guy. And what I would say to that is love always wins. Love and love and love and love, and don't expect anything in return, and love will always win. You may not see it, but you have planted seeds in their life that maybe they don't even remember for another 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, but love always wins, and God always has his way. And so I refuse to sit back and be like, well, they don't want a relationship with me. I'm still going to send a note on every visit saying, praying for you still, love you, or whatever it is, whatever's on your heart. It doesn't have to be this big relationship, a big thing. Just throw a little seed out there and see what God wants to do.
Oh, I love that. So many people say they could never do foster care because they can't imagine bringing a baby into their life for, 6 months, a year, and then having to return the baby back to their mom or dad or both. And you guys have done it with Penelope, and you're doing it again with your foster son that you have now. And so walk me through some of like the feelings, because obviously you go through loss and grief, but you keep coming back and doing it again. So explain a little bit about your emotions and why you continue doing it.
Yeah, honestly, I think because of relationships with biomom, biomom meaning like all the biomoms we encounter. To me, seeing my relationship now with Penelope and her mom makes me think like, why can't I do this over and over and over again? And some might say like, oh, you are literally just so naive to the world and all these things. But I think honestly, I choose faith. I choose the best is yet to come. I pray that I have a heart for these moms and these kids and the impact that it makes. And I think for me, the scary part of like giving a child back, that's scary, but it doesn't even compare to the feeling of redeeming a family back together. And like, I think that is my main focus in all of it, is that it literally has nothing to do with me or what I want. I mean, I look back at my prayer journals from like a year ago when we still had Penelope, and I was like, I pray we adopt her. I pray this case closes. This is taking too long and all these things. And God's like, whoa, this isn't about you. This isn't about you like adding to your family. This is about the story I want to write, which is so much greater. There were hard days where I was like crying at the kitchen counter with my husband, and where I didn't understand what was happening, and where I was scared if I would ever see Penelope again. But God was so faithful, because I feel like I just opened myself up over and over and over again to the process he wanted to take me through. And I think when you look at your life, or when I look at my life, I don't want my life story to be this safe, easy, comfortable, you know, the traditional like 5-person family or 4-person family with a girl and a boy. Or you like, I don't want to live in that. I want to live a faith-filled life where it's adventurous and it's fun and it's hard, but I overcome. And I don't know, I have that craving for more. And I think, you know, people accomplish great things when they're not scared to dive in. And I think that's part of being brave, is just doing things afraid and just trusting God will pull you through.
Yeah.
So,
I love that. I think some of the things that we talk about at CFC is like so many people pray for a comfortable life.
yeah.
And that is not what God is asking of us. God is asking us to do the hard things, to press in, and that's going to grow our faith in Him. And so tell me a little bit about how you've seen God grow you and maybe even strengthen your marriage through all of this.
Oh my gosh, I feel like so many ways. I'm like, where do I want to go with it? Honestly, I personally love that I can show my daughters what it's like to do hard things and to live a life of faith. Like, I was talking to my husband, even like we're reminiscing on the last 5 years, and I want to be able to show my kids that we don't just make decisions based on like what's comfortable or what financially makes sense, or, you know, just the things that the world or society would say, like, this is what your decision should be. You should do this, go to college, get a job, work a 9 to 5. Like, this is this. Like, we want to be able to show the next generation and to show the people around us that, like, let's let God write the story of our lives. Let's have faith. Let's make hard decisions, even when it doesn't make sense. Something that I want to continue in doing is just making faith-based decisions instead of fear-based decisions or comfortable decisions or a non-risk decision. So I think that's one way that I've continued to grow and expand those muscles and strengthen those muscles, that ultimately, even when it's like, when it is a big decision later down the road to take in another baby when I already have the 2 babies, I can say I'm making this decision in faith because I've seen God come through in these other ways. So I think it only grows on itself. Did that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So choosing CFC, how do you feel that CFC has supported you through this process? Because obviously we like to differentiate ourselves because we're a Christian-based agency and we support our families in other ways than other agencies do. But just from your personal perspective, how have you felt supported by CFC through this?
Honestly, it feels like my ongoing worker. I think that's what they're called, right? Ongoing workers.
Yeah.
Okay. The people that come into your house every month. I honestly feel I've had 2, and then I had a licensing worker who was like amazing. But all my ongoing workers, all 2 of them, they have made me feel like they really care about my whole life, not just coming in, checking off boxes and leaving. Like, they are there when I'm like crying to them, or like if I'm like, I'm so mad at this, you know, caseworker or this biomod, like I can just like vent to them, and then they're like, oh yeah, like they're just for me, you know, like I just feel like that it's like such a support. And I remember, here's a great example of how Christian Family Care made me feel so backed and supported. I was like, I will never leave this agency. Like, they are the best. So I have my ongoing worker right now. In the podcast episodes, you'll hear with Jasmine, for those of you that listen, that there was a court hearing where my husband and I were talked about, my family was talked about, his baseball career was talked about. We were just like trash talked pretty much, and really thrown under the bus, really thrown off guard. And I remember just feeling like, this is so wrong. This is so wrong. And so I remember the judge was like, okay, I'm ordering you to take every single photo that even has any part of Penelope's like body in it, like off of all your social medias and all these things, even though I was in like compliance with the law of, you know, posting and all these things. And so I did. And then I remember there was like a tiny little part of Penelope's little body in one of the pictures that I posted, and I instantly got like a email from the caseworker saying like, take it down, like you can't, all these things. And I remember telling my licensing worker, this is not fair. as a foster parent, I am not doing anything wrong. I have done what the judge has ordered me to do. This is like getting out of hand where it's like this control thing. And like, it was just ugly. And I felt so victimized. I felt so vulnerable. I felt like there were these people that I didn't even know, lawyers, and this mom that I thought I trusted, like watching my life, watching my every move. I started to get really scared, to be honest, because I was like, is she gonna show up? Like, are people gonna just show up? Like, it was scary. And I remember my ongoing worker, she wrote this full-blown email attaching all the laws of like photos and all these things. She wrote this full-blown email to the caseworker on my behalf and on behalf of the agency, and like just in such full support of me, and saying like, this is one of our best foster moms. Like, she is like advocating, she is like using her platforms to get better foster parents into the Arizona community. And like, I just felt like, oh my gosh, I can like conquer the world. Like, I just felt so supported in that time, because that's what I needed. I felt like no one was supporting when we were sacrificing so much and already doing so much. And I don't know, I just felt like it was like the best pick me up, like, it felt like someone got in the ring and like boxed for me, you know?
Yeah. When you needed a break, you felt like someone picked up the gloves.
Totally. Yes, yeah. Totally.
So one of the things we really focus on at CFC is strengthening families. And so not just serving the kids, but like, how are we strengthening the whole family? And that includes obviously your family, our foster families, our safe families, and then also the families of the children we serve. And so we're just so honored that you guys have that same mission, and you're working with us through strengthening families and redeeming families, because that's what God wants, right? His vision was never this broken world where children were taken from their parents. So we're so honored to have you, and we love you guys. And thank you for advocating for foster care, because we think it's so important. So I'm excited for people to read your story and listen to Jasmine's story.
Yeah.
Like, if there's one thing I want everybody to do is go listen to those podcasts. It's a 3-part podcast, and it is enlightening to hear the things that she went through, you know, from her side, because I think we get so caught up in what's happening to us that we don't know what the other person is going through. So thank you so much for sharing, and we appreciate everything that you've done.
Oh, of course.